We're at the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead today in the Mount Charleston wilderness outside of Las Vegas, about 40 miles from the Strip, just a little bit below Charleston Village. And what we're going to do today, I'm going to try it again, is head up to Harris Mountain through a wilderness route that I'll show you as we go, and then make a circuit by going over to Griffith Peak using a saddle between Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak. I'm pointing in this direction because this is the ridge line I'm going to use to ascend to Harris Mountain. Anyway, and then descend by the Griffith Peak main trail, and then take Kyle Canyon Road, which is right in front of you right here. Take Kyle Canyon Road back to this location. So we'll see how all that goes. The big test is going to be when I reach Harris Mountain Summit, if I have enough energy and will to make that saddle descend 1,000 feet and then reascend 2 additional 1,000 feet between Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, what we're going to do is behind this restroom, there's a bridge. That bridge takes you across this wash. We take a right on the Augustus Trail, and we head up in this direction, and I'll show you where we connect with the ridge we're going to take. There are 2 approach ridges from here to Harris Mountain. We've taken the, I'll call it the western approach ridge. They make a kind of triangle, the Harris Triangle. And there's the eastern approach ridge. Both of them ascend to the center where we find Harris Mountain. So at some point I'm going to take the eastern approach ridge, maybe make a Harris Triangle. But for now, we're going to take the western approach ridge and ascend to Harris Mountain and then over to Griffith Peak. So let's get started. Okay, just to get you on the right track, here we are at the trailhead. We're behind the restroom, crossing the bridge. Little wash here. They actually closed the campground down during some of the summer months because the campground below, picnic area below, and above can experience flash floods in July through thunderstorms, water rushing down this wash. It's happened before, wiped out campgrounds. Anyway, okay, here we are. Augustus Trail. Take a right, and then I'll show you where the next turn is. Okay, here's the plan. There's the western approach ridge. And what we're going to do is circle around the base and then ascend the opposite side of that ridge and summit somewhere just to the left of this rocky section near the base of the ridge. Okay, answering the question where to turn off the Augustus Trail and begin to circle around the base of that western approach ridge. Well, actually, the spot is the beginning of Forest Road 579. I believe that's the number. I'll correct it if I'm wrong in the video. But anyway, yeah, this is the spot. Road 579. It's a maintenance road. And this will take you around the base of the western approach ridge. Okay, this is all about rapid ascent at the very beginning. Now let's talk about ascent and incline. First of all, the incline, the ascent up to Harris Mountain is about 3,000 feet above the trailhead. And then you descend about 1,000, maybe 1,500 feet to the saddle between Harris and Griffith Peak, and then reascend about 2,000 feet. So add up all the ascent and reascent on this adventure. This is a very loose rock road here. Glad I'm not trying to drive it, especially with the beast. Anyway, yeah, the ascent total is going to be about 5,000 feet in all. To give you a comparison, if you ascended just to Griffith Peak from the South Climb Trailhead, you're ascending a little over 4,000 feet. If you then go on to Charleston Peak, yeah, about 5,000 feet. And in terms of distance and time, wow, it's good to get to the top of this first little rise. In terms of distance and time, what you're doing is, this is going to take longer than if I did the Charleston Loop. I did the full Charleston Loop not too long ago in about 7.5 hours. It took me over that much time just to get up to Harris Peak and back using this approach route, because there's so much wilderness to traverse. So yeah, this is not the economy shortcut experience, but the value of this is just being on a totally wild ridge you'll see in a moment, and experiencing a nearly untouched area. Very beautiful and pristine. By the way, this little forest road, sometimes, like where we are right now, you almost need to pick it out and make sure that you don't miss it. It gets more well-defined after this area. I think there must have been a flash flood through here at one time, but we're circling around the base of the western approach ridge now, or at least we've arrived at the base. Okay, here we are at the base of that western approach ridge, and you could begin ascending here, but what I'm going to do instead is circle around, stay on the roads as long as I can, because the wilderness takes 2 to 3 times more time to traverse a wilderness area than to be on a road or a trail. A little bit about the heat and water. The heat in Las Vegas is 114 degrees today. It was 75 degrees when I started out here. It was 94 degrees when I was still in Las Vegas this morning. And the general rule of thumb that I've discovered is that for every 1,000 feet you ascend, the temperature drops about 5 degrees. So that 114 degrees in Las Vegas is not what I'm going to be experiencing up here. I should be in 70s and 80s all day. Still, 80 degrees climbing these steep inclines. It really drains your water. And on a dry day like today, even though it's cooler up here, that dryness that the general environment is experiencing just dehydrates you a lot more quickly than on cooler days. And so what I have is, last time I went up just to Harris Mountain from the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead, I used about 6 liters of water. I started with 6 liters and I came back with about a ½ liter. You definitely do not want to run out of water on a day like this. And this is a long circuit. It's going to be potentially twice as long as last time. And I'm just reaching Harris Mountain. And so I've got between 7 and 8 liters of water. Now, carrying 7 to 8 liters of water is a challenge in itself. So while ascending the steep ridges, I'll be doing so carrying 7 to 8 liters of water. So that tends to slow a person down, but running out of water is life threatening. This just slows me down. And by the way, while on this trail here, we can see some landmarks that are going to get even more impressive as we ascend. There is Charleston Peak, and here is Coxcomb Ridge. Fletcher Peak is over in this direction. There you go, up toward Fletcher Peak. Sun just beginning to hit the upper area of Fletcher Peak. And then looking around in this direction, here's our approach ridge. We're still circling around the base. There's that rocky section that I spoke about earlier. So let's continue around this approach ridge. Okay, as this forest road begins to circle around the lower base of the western approach ridge, forest road, I believe 579, morphs into a road. I think it's called Rainbow Ridge Road. Again, I'll correct all these in the annotations if I'm wrong. Rainbow Ridge Road skirts the eastern edge of the Rainbow subdivision. There's little to no residential areas, homes right on or near this road. So we're pretty good. If you get down into further into the Rainbow subdivision, you begin to feel like you're on people's private property. So this is actually a nice way to accomplish some of the initial ascent of this approach ridge. Okay, where do you leave this road and start heading up the ridge? Actually, a very easy spot to remember. We've achieved most of the ascent this road's going to give us, where we hit this dip sign. Now it's time to ascend to the summit of the Western Approach Ridge and then take that ridge over to Harris Mountain. Here we go. By the way, this has been no small elevation gain on these roads, and you can imagine what it would have been if handling this in the wilderness. I've ascended something like 700 feet above the trailhead by this point. Okay, so let's make a beeline straight over to, we'll take a diagonal approach to the summit of the ridge, and now it's just a matter of weaving around a burn area with a lot of trees that have been burned, and a lot of new growth brush. By the way, ascending this approach ridge is, at least getting to the center of the approach ridge, that initial ascent is, every step is 12 to 18 inches elevation gain, and I liken it to ascending the Empire State Building twice, taking 3 steps at a time and on a loose rock surface. It is working okay as long as you know where the stairs are and each step is just a reasonably level spot between rocks. Just to give you an idea how quickly we are ascending. Not long ago we were down on that road, Rainbow Ridge Road, I believe. And now, yeah, here is the Griffith Harris saddle. Turn right, you go up to Griffith Peak. Turn left and you go to Harris Mountain. And then there's the, in fact, yeah, Griffith Peak right up there. And then we have the south ridge of Kyle Canyon, Charleston Peak. See, all this is suddenly visible because we have made so much of an ascent in such a short time. There's Lee Peak. And then the north ridge of Kyle Canyon over to Mummy Mountain. So there you have it. And then here's the ridge we're on. And you can actually see a sign that says dip, and that's where the road is down there. Let's see if we can nail it. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, here we go. Look at that. And here's what we've ascended through. This burn area. And if you look carefully, there is a sort of pathway weaving around the brush. You don't have to step on anything. It is a recovering burn area. You can pretty much stay on the rocks, treat the area with real care, tread lightly, because it is a wild, beautiful, recovering area. Still ascending to the center of this approach ridge. There's a grassy area up there, and Harris Mountain's right behind it. As far as altitude, we're about halfway to the summit of Harris Mountain, maybe a little less than halfway, maybe a third. Anyway, yeah, and views are opening up. I have no firm ground to stand on here, but I'm going to give this a try. There's the Harris Griffith saddle, Harris to the left, Griffith to the right. There's actually a trail that winds up around the backside of those cliffs. There is Griffith Peak. Or at least an area below the summit. It's hard to tell from here. That area right there, if you've ever been up the South Climb Trail and you get to the junction when you reach the summit of Kyle Canyon and your things are leveling off, you're very happy to be up there after all the steep climbing on the trail. That's the spot. That's approximately where the junction is. And then over here, here's a great view of Cathedral Rock. Back up to the south rim of Kyle Canyon and over to Charleston Peak, Lee Peak, and Mummy Mountain. We'll see a lot more once we ascend this. Get a look at this ridge here. Yeah, we are still ascending a pretty steep area. Not as steep as it was below. I did choose this ridge being a much steeper ridge. There's a more gradual ridge just to the west of this, right in this area. And that might have even been more rapid, but I don't know. I just like the views on this ridge, even though it takes a lot more energy. So here you see the ridge around us. Beautiful ponderosa pine, survived the burn. Okay, let's continue on up. Well, I'm not so sure, but maybe things are leveling off slightly. And it looks like there's a horizon up there, not too far above where we are. There's that rocky, that may be that rocky section. I don't know. But this is we're nearing the center of the Western Approach Ridge. And just to see what we're passing through, definite burn area. And this looks like, just based on the shape of the trees, it looks like a beautiful mountain mahogany grove before the burn. And you can see the burn damage. We've been weaving through this area. And then looking up higher, Charleston Loop. And then over to Cathedral Rock, Charleston Village. So there you can see, and there's the Rainbow Subdivision. I'd zoom in, except I don't have enough stability right now to do stuff like that. So let's continue on up. You'll see more of this as we get higher. I just wanted to show you what things look like at this point on the ridge. Well, it took about an hour and 40 minutes to get to the center of the ridge. You see, we are now on the Western Approach Ridge and heading up toward Harris Mountain. And Harris Mountain is actually that tree-covered summit on the horizon, and we'll need to traverse another burn area, pretty steep, between us and that summit of Harris Mountain. And and we've got this ridge, as you can see. And let's turn around and see the ridge on the way down. mountain mahogany again, burned out, but you can see some surviving mountain mahogany, or maybe it came up after the burn. It would have had to grow very rapidly. But most of them, as you can see, are burned. There are a few scattered pine trees. I think they're ponderosa. And this is the ridge going downward. Now let's look around. Larger picture. Looking down to the trailhead area below on Kyle Canyon Road. It's going to be somewhere down in this area. So you can see the silhouette of Gas Peak and the Sheep Range to the left, Gas Peak, that pointy peak in the center. And then here you're looking up the eastern approach ridge. I want to try that sometime. And you see how the two ridges make a triangle and meet at Harris Mountain Summit. And then looking below us at some of the ridges. You'll remember on the, if you look at the Fletcher View Ridge page, I ascended a ridge and encountered a rocky barrier, a ledge. Caused me to turn around. That's the ledge there. And I think there might be a way up the center of that ledge, but it looks pretty rugged above the ledge. So now we don't know if that's an approach to Harris Mountain Summit. At least not one that I may want to take. Okay, and looking around, the Griffith Harris saddle. And now you're looking along the upper area of the south ridge of Kyle Canyon. And here is Griffith Peak. Cathedral Rock. Charleston Peak. Lee Peak. North Ridge of Kyle Canyon to Mummy Mountain. Then there's a saddle, rain trees at the base of that saddle. 3,000-year-old bristlecone pine. Nice trails go up to Raintree. There's Fletcher Peak. And then back to where we started, looking down Kyle Canyon and the silhouettes of the Sheep Range and Gas Peak. Okay, let's continue upward. Okay, we're at the grassy hills. There are two grassy hills about the same size as this one straight ahead, and that's followed by the final approach to Harris Mountain Summit. So far it's been around 2.5 hours from the trailhead, which is, wow, it's about a third faster than it was last time. There's the Charleston Loop. Here's the ridge I'm on that I've been ascending. One thing I think that helped is I ascended this ridge just a little bit below the center of the ridge and on the west side of the ridge. So I don't know, something's made this go faster. It could be the roads in the beginning also. Okay, onward and upward. Well, there's the first grassy hill, and beyond it, the ridge that we've just ascended, the western approach ridge for Harris Mountain. And you can see pinyon pine trees below us. It's a burn area, then there's a band of living pinyon pines. But what's above us in this next grassy ridge, by the way, there's the Rainbow subdivision, and that's roughly the area where we began ascending this ridge. About 400 feet from the summit. And here you can see up the ridge. We've got another grassy ridge, not so steep, followed by Harris Mountain summit in the background. So 400 feet to go, and yeah, we're getting into burned bristlecone pines now. These are ancient pines that live to be up to 4,000 years old, and the ones that burned looks like they might have been between 500 and some, like this one right here, could have been 1,000 years old. So in a moment, all that's lost. And then we'll just do a quick 360. We've pointed out all the peaks. See if you can remember them. Charleston Loop. And Angel Peak. The white bubble is a military radar, Air Force radar. Below it is the Spring Mountains Youth Camp, which is a correctional facility. And there you have it. First grassy hill below the summit. As you can see, we're now in the bristlecone pine belt, and you're looking at the summit, that forested area. So we're only maybe 200, 250 feet below Harris Mountain summit. And you can see part of this bristlecone pine forest is burned and parts survived. There are a few ponderosa pines left here, but mostly now we're in the bristlecone pine zone. Here's an ancient pine that burned, a few others. Looking down Kyle Canyon. There's the eastern approach ridge. We're on the western approach ridge, and they're about to meet the two ridges at Harris Mountain summit ahead. And just for the records, I can see the trailhead now. Let's take a look down there. If If I can nail it, we don't know if we can do that. Yes. I believe that's the trailhead. And if that's not it, I believe that's the one. There's Kyle Canyon Road. Another trailhead area. But yeah, that first one was the trailhead. And there's the intersection of Deer Creek Road heading off to the left, and Kyle Canyon Road continuing down. Final approach to Harris Mountain Summit. And I believe I do have enough gas left in the tank to head over to Griffith Peak. So this will be a huge circuit. Here we are on Harris Mountain Summit, and I guess under their little Altoids box, Summit box, there's a Pringles box. So yeah, it's kind of a makeshift thing, but as I've said before, not many people get up here due to the remoteness of the trailheads. There's Charleston Peak, Lee Peak, Mummy Mountain, Fletcher Peak, Angel Peak, and we'll sweep back over those real quick. Okay, and let's look over here. Griffith Peak. It's our next destination. We're looking at descending about 1,000 feet, then reascending a couple thousand feet. I'll know more exactly when we get there. Here's Sexton Ridge on the west side of Level Canyon. There's Level Canyon below. And here's the Wilson Ridge. You see that tree line, and just follow that tree line. That's the Wilson Ridge. East side of Level Canyon, and then the Rainbow Mountains. Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridge Line. And we'll take a look at all these ridge lines at some point. Very beautiful place to be is on a mountain ridge line. It's like you're on a mountaintop the whole time. Here's Potosi Mountain. In a larger view of Griffith Peak, Level Canyon, Potosi Mountain, Wilson Ridge on this side, Sexton Ridge is on the other side, going down from Griffith Peak. And we're going to try this ridge. Remember how I said that there's kind of a triangle of ridges that meets at Harris Mountain Summit. We came up the western approach ridge. Here's the eastern approach ridge. And, you know, I can't vouch for it, haven't been on it yet, but one of these days I'll get on it. Okay, and what do we have around here? You've seen the Wilson Ridge. Let's start there. Remember the tree line. La Madre Mountains. Gas Peak, the pointy peak. You pretty much only see the silhouette of Gas Peak. And then over this direction, the Sheep Range. Again, just a silhouette. And then back to Angel Peak, Fletcher Peak, Mummy Mountain, and then around the Charleston Loop. So there you have it. And by the way, yeah, it's pretty hazy. 114 degrees down in that Las Vegas Valley today, and at least 114 degrees in the upper valley around 2,000 feet, which is at the base of Gas Peak there, the pointy peak. And there's a gun range below Gas Peak, and then Centennial Hills where I live. And so Centennial Hills probably around 110 degrees right now. Henderson is going to get up to close to 120 before the day's out. And then just take a look at the beautiful, beautiful Harris Mountain summit. It's still spring up here, even though it is the third weekend in July. Wow. The whole world seems under a heat wave right now, according to the news. Right now, I'm feeling about between 70 and 80 degrees, probably closer to 80. But very nice up here. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to head down the saddle. So we're going to descend about 1,000 feet, head down the Harris Griffith Saddle, and then on up to Griffith Peak. I wanted to keep timings today, and we're about at just a little under 4 hours to get to this point. So now we're going to see what this next section, Harris Mountain to Griffith Peak, what kind of timing that's going to take. Here we go. Okay, how do you get from Harris Mountain Summit, there's the summit box, to the Harris Griffith Saddle? Because you need to navigate that saddle if you're going to get to Griffith Peak, which is on the horizon ahead. So, little weaving through some trees here, and soon we will see the whole stretch before us. Okay, seeing more of it. We're heading down. So I think it's around 1,000 feet down to the base of the saddle, and then another couple thousand feet up, but not sure. We'll know as soon as we get there. I'll check my altimeter. See if we can get a good view of the stretch down to the saddle. Well, that's pretty good. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the downhill to the saddle. There's a little plateau before the saddle, and then you see some cliffs there. The saddle is at the base of the cliffs. Then there's actually a trail that weaves up over those cliffs, and then it's a matter of ascending to Griffith Peak summit. And I've never found the trail that goes up to all the way to Griffith Peak summit. So today I'm going to try to nail that trail. I keep losing it. I don't know where it splits off to, actually. But that'll be one of the hopes for today, to find that trail. And just a quick note, there is no trail from Harris Mountain Summit down to the saddle. You pretty much have some loose rock, and you just need to navigate this terrain, but it's not too difficult. Okay, we are at the grassy plateau on the way down the Harris Griffith saddle. So once we get to the end of this grassy plateau, we're going to have another downhill. So far we've descended about 300 feet. Okay, this is the second plateau. After that first one we were on, there was some brush to navigate up above. There's a plateau up above there. We've descended about 300 feet. Don't want to descend too far, because all the descent means that we have to reascend. And there is a trail. I'm gonna show you those cliffs, and look on the left side. You may not be able to see the trail from here, but just take my word for it, there's a trail. I'm going to trace its way up to Griffith Peak. Saddle. Trail somewhere in this area. Rises up to this area. And then continues on, and we'll have to see where to pick up that trail. In the past I've lost it right about here. So we'll just have to see if we can keep it. It'd be nice to be on a trail all the way to Griffith Peak. And by the way, looking back, here's a good shot of Harris Mountain. Here are some of those plateaus we've faced so far. Little forest on this side. And it'd be nice to find a trail through this thick section of manzanita. I mean, not manzanita, mountain mahogany. We'll have to search around and see. Well, it's pretty much find your best path to weave through this mountain mahogany. Pretty thick. Let's see, maybe there's a path. Ah, yeah. So on the Kyle Canyon side, the other side's the Lovell Canyon side. The Kyle Canyon side is on the right. It appears this is a better, more wide open pathway through the mountain mahogany. So now we're going to continue to descend. We're going to descend through a pine forest. I think it's, there's some bristlecone pine in there, but mostly ponderosa. And then we descend further and finally reach the saddle below. Still on our way down to the Harris Griffith saddle. quite an assortment of navigational challenges. Now we're in the pine forest, and again, if there is a trail, I have not found it. So anyway, yeah, it gets a bit thick down here, so I'll check in again on the other side of this. Well, don't get too hooked on that pine forest on the right, even though it's a little more wide open, because that will take you away from the saddle and down into Kyle Canyon if you keep going that way. So you don't want to do that. So back into the brush, and the challenge is to navigate through this thick brush and reach the saddle immediately below in this direction. Okay, last descent to the Harris Griffith saddle. There it is. And a challenge is to pick up the trail on the other side at the base of these cliffs, and that trail will help you navigate around and up those cliffs up into this area where things become a little easier. So yeah, I'll show you when we get down there. That's about all I can say. Kyle Canyon. The ridge we've been descending from Harris Mountain. Level Canyon. And back to the Harris Griffith saddle on up to Griffith Peak. And to make things a little more interesting, even on this super hot day, it looks like thunderstorms could be forming. I've been in thunderstorms in these mountains before, and you get pelted by hail and rain, and temperature drops considerably. So yeah, that should be interesting if that actually happens. Let's keep on heading up to Griffith Peak. Okay, good news. I think I just stumbled on that Griffith Peak trail that begins on Harris Mountain Road and then skirts the midsection of Harris Mountain above Level Canyon, which is immediately below us here, and then ascends these cliffs and heads up to Griffith Peak. Now, if I can stay on the trail the whole time, that'll vastly speed things up, but we don't know. That's what I'm going to try to do. I'm on the trail now. Let's see if we can stay on it. Okay, trail is going well, heading toward the cliffs, and it just doesn't seem like anything can ascend those cliffs without class 3 climbing, or class 4 even. But now look at it on this side, sheer cliffs. And then here we have Kyle Canyon. Cathedral Rock. And you can see the other mountains. I pointed them out a few times, so probably that's enough. And then here is the route up to Harris Mountain Summit from this saddle. We just descended this. Okay, one thing I can say about this Griffith Peak trail is that there's a lot of tree fall on it, and you really got to watch it carefully when you hit a place with trees that have fallen over the trail, because that's where you could lose it, and then you're in the wilderness. And I want to see if we can stay in the trail all the way to Griffith Peak. Here we go. And by the way, for perspective, see the line about halfway up Harris Mountain? That line is the Griffith Peak Trail. So, and it starts at Upper Harris Mountain Road. Okay, I'm going to trace that and see if we can trace it to where we're standing right now. As you can see, we already lost it, but maybe when you're on it, it's easier. I think it ascends a bit and then connects here to where we are right now on that trail. Okay, just to give you an idea how this trail is difficult to stay on, some person has put some cairns on the trail. Now the thing about cairns is that they're easily disturbed and they may not be here when you're on this trail. But just a word to you is that yes, watch for cairns. I've seen a few so far, and with some luck those cairns will continue and guide us on this trail all the way to Griffith Peak. What are the chances? That would be fantastic. And by the way, the descent was about 800 feet. The descent from Harris Mountain to the saddle. So if Harris Mountain is 10,000 and we descend at 800, then we're about at 9,200, which means that we have 1,800 feet to get to Griffith Peak summit. I was thinking it might be even more altitude gain, but it's not. So that's a good sign too. Just to give you an idea how the trail guides you along the cliffs. Here it is ahead of us, ascending through this little opening and then continuing on. And let's look around, see what else we can see. Here's a great shot of Level Canyon. In the Level Canyon to Harris Mountain video, I ascended the Wilson Ridge, which you see ahead of you, to Harris Mountain, then descended, and at that lower high point, right in the center there, right before that, I just took a dive down in the base of Level Canyon and continued back all the way to the trailhead. So gives you an idea of perspective. You can see that video on Las Vegas area trails. And then looking at these cliffs that we need to circumvent. Wow, pretty imposing. However, this trail promises to take us along, around the left side and over to that grassy area above. Let's just see how that works out. And past that little opening, the trail continues to skirt the base of these cliffs winding upward. So yeah, it's a lot nicer and less imposing than it looked from a distance. Some nice construction went into this trail. So this is a serious trail, as long as we don't lose it. And here's another section of the trail winding its way along. I just ascended this part. So you see it's a decent little trail. Comes up to this point, continues on. Yeah, these are those cliffs that it seemed it would be impossible to skirt the edge of these cliffs. But this little trail is doing the trick. Well, this trail got me around the cliffs. There are the cliffs. And you can see some of the construction that went into this trail. That rock wall. And then looking around this way, you can see the pathway of the trail. Down and around and to the saddle. And then looking around in this direction. You can see the construction continuing with the wall on the outer side of the trail that's been built up. So yeah, nice trail. So far, we're on it. Okay, and by the way, there's Harris Mountain. And there's the descent, 800 feet to the saddle, leaving about 2,000 feet, 1,800 feet to ascend to reach Griffith Peak. Okay, now we are coming out above the cliffs, which you can see below, and the trail made it very, very easy. There's Harris Mountain, by the way. You see the line of Harris Mountain Road, and where it ends down there, or turns the corner, is where the Griffith Peak Trailhead begins. So yeah, we're on that trail now. Griffith Peak Trail. And you can see the great construction continues. And you can see we're now in that grassy area above. And the big challenge is going to be not losing the trail up here. And every time I've been on this trail, I have lost it. So let's just see if we can stay on it. Okay, if we're going to lose this trail, it is going to be right somewhere in this little stretch. You can see there's some tree fall here, and there's definitely going to be more to come. So sorry for all the shaking. Had to go around the edge of that tree. Okay, continuing on. And this is a good perspective for a quick look back down the Griffith Harris saddle up to Harris Mountain. And we have about 1,200 feet elevation to go. So I believe it's 1,200. Yeah, 12 to 15. Okay, continuing on. And let's see if we can stay on this trail. Lots of tree fall. I believe I'm still on the trail. Looks like a trail, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah, continuing up, and Griffith Peak is beyond that rocky outcrop. We'll get a better view in a bit. Well, I haven't lost the trail yet. Very, very faint, but if you just look for a kind of level area on the side of the mountain here, on the side of the slope, you'll stay pretty much on the trail. And then here is, after a long, steady section over here from the top of the cliffs, after we switch back up to the grassy area, this is the first switchback, and you see a little cairn here, and the trail heads up in this direction. So let's see if we can actually stay on this trail. This should be a real challenge. So this is the key I've missed before. This trail winds around, and along the west side of the ridge, I have done the rugged Class 3 east side the last few times I've been on this Griffith Harris trip. And yeah, I missed this. So the key is, yeah, you're gonna, after you switch back up the cliffs, you have a straight stretch, and then you're going to have another switchback that's going to take you upward and around the back side or the west side of this ridge. Okay, this could be nice. And here we are continuing along the back side and the west side of this ridge, and we've got to navigate around that vertical rocky area above, but I'm trusting that if we stay on the trail here, it'll take us around that pretty easily. And here's a shot of Kyle Canyon. Beautiful views on this side of the ridge. I don't know why I didn't find this earlier. And you see all the way to the sheep range. I've already seen one Ascatus butterfly, rare butterfly, found only here in the entire world in the Spring Mountains. So yeah, wasn't able to take a shot of it or a video. Just moved too fast before I could turn on the camera. But anyway, yeah, a lot of cool stuff up here. And it's spring, as you can see. Flowers all around. And this may stretch your trail finding skills a bit, because I am on the trail here, but also trying to pick it out. It's very, very faint. It appears, disappears. I want to stay on this trail so that it guides us all the way to Griffith Peak without having to do any rock climbing or traverse any wilderness, because I'm wildernessed out at this point. Pretty large, thick tree fall here. If you encounter something like this, just go above and then come back down, because it perfectly blocked the trail that continued straight. And so I'm on the other side of that tree fall, and here's the trail continuing. So we want to keep on the trail to experience the guidance of the trail and also the more gradual incline. Time to check in again. We are just 1,000 feet below Griffith Peak. You can't see it from here, but continuing on this nice little trail, the backdoor Griffith Peak Trail. And here's a 360. You're seeing Lovell Canyon, and here's Sexton Ridge heading down from Griffith Peak. Now you're looking at Potosi Mountain, Lovell Canyon, all the way down to Potosi, then over to the Rainbow Mountains. Great view of the Griffith Peak Trail. You can see that line along the side of Harris Mountain. And that begins on Upper Harris Springs Road, right in the center there, winds around. There's Harris Mountain, and then it connects with the saddle, and you've seen the rest where there's switchbacks up the cliff area, and then a little more navigation of the trail. It circles around the west side, that's the left of this ridge, and then circles around again, and now it's on the east side, the right side of the ridge toward Lovell Canyon. Now the east side is to your left. So I'm anxious to see where Griffith Peak appears and how we get over some of these rocky areas between us and Griffith Peak. Time to check in again. Not sure how this trail is going to get me over these rocky areas, but these are the last remaining rocky areas before we have the steep but steady incline to Griffith Peak, that final approach. And let's look around. Sexton Ridge, Lovell Canyon, Potosi Mountain at the end. You can see the Rainbow Mountains. Here's a good shot of the Wilson Ridge. There you see the Griffith Trail, and where that ends, you're on Harris Mountain Road, and then just follow that tree line and you're on the Wilson Ridge, and where that tree line ends, just a little beyond that, is the Wilson Ridge Southern High Point is what I call it, but I think it continues on south beyond that. So there you have it. La Madre Mountains, you can see the Las Vegas Valley, back to Harris Mountain. Okay, how do we get around those rocks? The answer is more switchbacks. So we've switched backed up the side of this hill and continuing along. Who knows where it continues around the edge here, but I'm thinking it's got to go up. I don't see any way it could go around the edge of that cliff up there. So anyway, let's see what it does. And then here are the cliffs that we are skirting without any class 3 climbing. All very nice, gradual trail, although in some places you are on the edge of a very loose rock slope. And so just watch your step. Well, wonder of wonders, the trail continued around the edge and brought me very gradually and securely up around these cliffs here. There was a few loose rock sections that put you on the edge of eternity, but it remained a trail the whole way. And as you can see, it continues. We'll see how it gets us up to this area. We're looking at the final approach to Griffith Peak, but we need to get around this next corner. So that'll be the next puzzle. I'm to check in again. This trail has brought me with a very gradual incline all the way up to the final approach. You see two high points ahead. The one on the left is Griffith Peak. The one on the right is kind of a false summit plateau. So yeah, just continuing along and up to Griffith Peak, and then you can see the area we're in, a very secluded, wild area. Definitely has experienced a burn. Looking down Level Canyon. Up to Griffith Peak. And over to Kyle Canyon and the Charleston Loop. Okay, let's continue on up. We've got two more challenging rises ahead, but then it is literally downhill all the way. Okay, we're about 700 feet from the summit, maybe less, maybe 600 feet, maybe even 500 feet. And the summit is right up there. We've got this false summit still. But something's come into view here. The Las Vegas Strip. Let's zoom in on it. There you have it. Las Vegas Strip. And then looking back down through the forest to Harris Mountain. And yeah, definitely in a major burn area here. Imagine all of this with bristlecone pines would have been simply amazing. But, you know, I think it was lightning, Carpenter fire of um, 2013 caused by lightning, and that's part of how nature manages itself. But very sad, all the bristlecone pines that that died in that fire. Okay, let's see. I'm going to zoom in on Harris Mountain and then look at Las Vegas. We'll just pan around La Madre Mountains. Here's a good shot of the Wilson Ridge. Rainbow Mountains. Lovell Canyon below, all the way to Potosi Mountain. So a lot of different perspectives here as we gain altitude. So let's make this final 500 to 600 feet, then it's downhill all the way. Time to check in again. Griffith Peak is right up here. A little over 200 feet above where I'm standing. And we'll just pan around here. Lovell Canyon, Potosi Mountain at the far end, Rainbow Mountains, Wilson Ridge, La Madre Mountains, Harris Mountain through the burn area, Kyle Canyon, there's Mummy Mountain. We're about ready to summit Griffith Peak, but before we do so, let's just take a look around here. Sexton Ridge, heading down on the west side of Lovell Canyon. There's Lovell Canyon, Rainbow Mountains in the distance, Wilson Ridge on the east side of the canyon, Las Vegas Strip, La Madre Mountains, and you see the Las Vegas Valley behind the La Madre Mountains. Then straight down to the saddle between Harris Mountain and Griffith Peak that we just ascended. And in the distance behind, you can see Gas Peak, then the Sheep Range, Fletcher Peak, and to the right of it is Angel Peak, and then Kyle Canyon below. Okay, we're on the final approach to Griffith Peak summit. It's one of my favorite summits. Very beautiful and an awesome view. You should see the lights of Las Vegas from this summit at, in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. I was up here on the Four Peak circuit. So you can take a look at that on LasVegasAreaTrails.com and see images of those lights. But here we are, Griffith Peak. Here is the summit box. We have made it. All the way from the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead, taking in Harris Mountain on the way. So let's just take a 360 from up here just to see what you can see. Some clouds, actually. They're not amounting to anything. I was concerned that might be some thunderstorms. So, yeah, Charleston Peak. Lee Peak. Mummy Mountain. Fletcher Peak. And there's Angel Peak. You can see Charleston Village below us. And then coming around in this direction, oh, there's a good shot of Harris Mountain. Now it's in the sun. And you can see in the far background Sheep Range on the left, Gas Peak on the right, and then Las Vegas Valley with the La Madre Mountains in the foreground. Let's get a shot of the Strip. Then around this way. It's a good shot of Sexton Ridge. I've covered just about every part of Sexton Ridge except for maybe 1,000 linear feet, maybe less. I've tackled it from the bottom, from the Lovell Canyon Trailhead, and then from up here I've descended. I haven't yet been able to do the whole ridge from either direction yet, so That's still coming up. In fact, what I'd like to do at some point is do the Wilson Ridge on the east side of Level Canyon, ascend that to the Harris Mountain area, or at least the saddle between Griffith and Harris, and then ascend up to Griffith, and then descend Sexton Ridge. But I just don't know if there's enough hours in a day to do that, or if I've got enough fuel in the tank to accomplish that. But who knows? And there we're looking down at Pahrump, and not Death Valley, but I think that is the Amargosa Valley beyond Pahrump. And I just can't see with the glare on the phone screen, but it's all there. and then down in this direction is, I believe, Trout Canyon. That's one that we have yet to explore. So there you have it, Griffith Peak. And now what we're going to do is descend the main Griffith Peak trail down to the South Climb Trailhead, and then run or walk or crawl the road, Kyle Canyon Road, back down to the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead, depending on how I feel. Okay, this has been an awesome adventure. Okay, a quick summary of what lies ahead here. We're going to descend down the Griffith Peak Trail, and you can see it below, to the junction. At the junction, we're going to head downward, and you can see part of the trail below there. We head downward to the South Climb Trailhead, which is above Charleston Village and at the base of Cathedral Rock. Then we're going to take Kyle Canyon Road down past Charleston Village and over to the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead, where we began. So maybe I'll do a little running. I need to revive myself first. But yeah, downhill all the way. This is really nice. As we're closing in on the junction, one look back at Griffith Peak. Okay, continuing on to the junction. Going a lot faster since we got a real trail here. And I've actually been able to do a little running on the downhill. Okay, now we're heading down below the junction. Junction's right above here. Here we go, about 4.5 miles to the South Climb Trailhead. Continuing to descend the South Climb Trail. And if you want to see the viewpoints, beautiful viewpoints on this trail, and a little more of the South Climb Trail, look in on LasVegasAreaTrails.com on the Griffith Peak page, and that will cover the area that I have been descending. I haven't done a lot of recording because I'm working on speeding up a little bit so that I can get back before dark. Got a long ways to go to that Fletcher Canyon Trailhead. Got another 2.5 miles on this trail, and then taking Kyle Canyon Road another 3 miles or so to the Fletcher Canyon Trailhead. Onward. Time to check in again. Maybe you remember this point on the trail. This is an overlook. Actually, the first great, or the lowest great overlook on the South Climb Trail. Pretty awesome view. There are 3 or 4 overlooks on this trail. One great thing about the South Climb Trail, you can look straight down to Charleston Village from some of these overlooks. But the thing that I really want to point out today is there's still snow. 3rd week in July. Let's zoom in on this. You see this band of snow. And there, I believe, is Griffith Peak. Okay, let's continue down. I'm actually walk running. Didn't realize I had no idea I would have enough energy to do anything other than crawl down. Just gotta catch this. Who could have imagined I'd be crossing snow the third week in July? Too amazing. In fact, I better put the camera down so I can use both hands and not slip. Well, here we are, back at the trailhead. Total time, counting videos and rest, was 13 hours. What an amazing loop. Call this the Griffith Loop from Fletcher Canyon Trailhead. Total immersion in nature the entire day.